The young and the restless spoilers shock in the glamorous yet treacherous world of Genoa City, where business empires rise and fall with the flick of a signature and alliances fracture under the weight of betrayal. A storm was brewing that not even the most calculating of its elite could foresee. The revelation that Kane Ashby, once seen as a reformed man striving for redemption, had been living a double life under the alias Aristotle Dumas shook the very foundations of the city. For months, whispers of a mysterious billionaire acquiring property across Genoa's most coveted districts had captivated the media and the boardrooms alike. This elusive figure had quietly snapped up parcels of land surrounding Chancellor Industries, Jabot Cosmetics, and even the headquarters of Newman Enterprises, making strategic moves that sent stock prices into wild fluctuations and raised eyebrows among the city's most powerful families. But no one, not Victor Newman, not Jack Abbott, and certainly not Lily Winters, could have predicted that behind the polished facade of the European tycoon was the man they once called friend, colleague, lover, or worse, betrayer. The unraveling began in whispers, as such things often do, with scattered reports from Paris suggesting that a man matching Dumas' profile was being investigated in connection with a suspicious death at a luxury villa in Nice. The victim: Damian Kane, a financial magnate with controversial ties and a history of legal evasion. What began as an accidental poisoning theory quickly evolved into a full-blown murder investigation when a second body turned up, a security consultant, stabbed in a secluded corridor beneath the estate's garden terrace. French authorities, facing mounting international pressure, quietly shared intelligence with the FBI, and when the dots were connected, property records, digital communications, travel logs, a name emerged from the shadows: Kane Ashby. That was the moment everything changed. Lily Winters had spent years rebuilding her life, brick by fragile brick, after every collapse caused by Kane's missteps. From his lies about Philip Chancellor III, to his entanglements with Juliette Helton, and even his faked death, each transgression had left a fracture on her heart, a scar that faded but never truly healed. She had grown wiser, more guarded, and determined to protect herself and her children from any further heartbreak. So when news reached her that the man she once loved, the father of her children, had been arrested in connection to a double homicide in France, her first instinct wasn't disbelief, it was a crushing sense of inevitability. And yet, even with all the damage he had caused, part of her still refused to believe that Kane, for all his flaws, was capable of murder. But the evidence was mounting. Investigators discovered encrypted communications between Kane and multiple individuals believed to be co-conspirators. A forensic sweep of the Nice villa uncovered a hidden laboratory with trace amounts of rare toxins, one of which matched the substance found in Damian Kane's system. Witnesses reported seeing a man matching Kane's description near the scene on the night of the murder. Surveillance footage, facial recognition, and even biometric data pulled from a discarded glass confirmed what the authorities had suspected all along: Aristotle Dumas was a mask, and Kane Ashby had worn it with disturbing ease. Genoa City was stunned. The arrest sent shockwaves through every social circle, corporate boardroom, and media outlet. Headlines screamed betrayal. Editorials questioned how many people had unknowingly done business with a potential killer. Kane's closest associates were interrogated. Chancellor Winters' shares plummeted. Newman Enterprises scrambled to sever any ties with Dumas-related holdings. And Lily, caught in the eye of the storm, faced an impossible choice: defend the father of her children or protect the integrity of the legacy she was trying to build. She chose silence, retreating from public view, even as friends and enemies alike pressed her for answers. The prosecution painted a chilling picture. That Kane, under the Dumas persona, had orchestrated an elaborate trap for several Genoa City elites under the guise of a lavish retreat in the south of France. He had lured them with promises of partnership, luxury, and influence, only to exploit their secrets and, ultimately, eliminate those who posed a threat. Damian Kane, allegedly in possession of information that could unravel Dumas' identity, had to be silenced. The second victim, the security consultant, was believed to have stumbled onto the plot and was swiftly removed. Though Kane's defense argued circumstantial evidence and the possibility of a setup, the shadow of his past, littered with deception, fraud, and manipulation, weighed heavily against him. And yet, as the courtroom drama intensified, so too did the speculation. Was Kane truly the mastermind, or merely a pawn in a far more intricate game? Some believed that Damian's death was the result of a power struggle among European crime syndicates, and that Kane's involvement, while damning, may have been coerced or manipulated by forces far darker than anyone imagined. Others whispered of a revenge plot dating back to his father, Colin Atkinson, whose own criminal past had left a trail of enemies across continents. There were even rumors that Kane had faked Colin's death to inherit his international connections and rise within the underground financial world, a theory that gained traction when no formal death certificate for Colin could be located. For Lily, none of it mattered anymore. She had finally come to terms with a painful truth: the man she once believed could change, the man she had forgiven time and again, was no longer someone she could recognize. Every time she had trusted him, he had taken that trust and used it as a weapon, against her, against their children, against himself. His arrest wasn't a betrayal, it was a confirmation of everything she had feared. That Kane had never truly left behind the shadows of his past. He had simply learned to dress them better. As the trial proceeded, Kane remained stoic. He refused a plea deal. He refused to testify. He refused even to make a public statement, allowing speculation to fill the void. His silence became a weapon in itself, fueling the mystery, amplifying the drama. In private, it was said he met with his lawyers and demanded only one thing: that his children be kept out of the public eye. Whether it was guilt, love, or an attempt to preserve some shred of dignity, no one could say. Genoa City, meanwhile, moved on, but not without scars. The fallout from the Dumas scandal reshaped alliances and reignited rivalries. Victor Newman intensified security within his empire, vowing never to be caught off guard again. Jack Abbott initiated a full audit of Jabot's European contracts. Devon Hamilton and Billy Abbott found themselves at odds over how to handle Chancellor Winter's damaged reputation. And Lily, once the heart of the company's stability, now stood at a crossroads between legacy and liberation. The legacy of Aristotle Dumas, or rather, the truth behind Kane Ashby, would haunt Genoa City for years to come. It was a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most charming of faces can hide the darkest intentions. That redemption, no matter how passionately sought, cannot be granted without genuine transformation. And that sometimes, the most dangerous enemies are not the ones outside the gate, but the ones we invite inside with open arms. And in the end, as the prison doors closed behind Kane, and the echoes of the gavel faded into memory, Lily didn't feel victorious or vindicated. She felt empty. Not because she had lost Kane, she had lost him a long time ago, but because she had believed, even for a moment, that someone like him could be saved. And that, in a city built on illusions, may have been the most dangerous lie of all. The revelation of Aristotle Dumas' true identity as Kane Ashby did more than shatter business deals and reputations, it fractured the very psyche of Genoa City. The realization that such deception had been carried out under the noses of the city's most powerful families without raising alarm created an atmosphere thick with confusion, guilt, and suppressed fury. It became painfully clear that Dumas was never some distant European investor, nor a reclusive billionaire whose empire had emerged mysteriously out of nowhere. He had always been among them, a man they had once welcomed into their homes, their businesses, their hearts. For many, the question wasn't just how Kane had pulled off such an elaborate con, but why no one had seen it coming. It seemed so obvious in retrospect. The knowledge of local dynamics, the targeted real estate acquisitions, the calculated manipulation of Genoa City's competitive rivalries, all pointed to someone with intimate familiarity of their world. And yet, not one of them had connected the dots. Even Victor Newman, a man known for his unrelenting suspicion and strategic foresight, had initially dismissed the possibility. In the early days of Dumas' quiet ascent, Victor had hypothesized that Tucker McCall, his longtime adversary, was behind the pseudonym, orchestrating some elaborate scheme to destabilize Newman Enterprises. The logic was sound. Tucker had the resources, the motive, the ambition. But the trail quickly ran cold. Background checks, shell companies, and encrypted networks only deepened the mystery, frustrating Victor in ways he hadn't experienced since his earliest wars with Jack Abbott. Never, in his most guarded calculations, did he consider that Dumas could be Kane Ashby. A man he viewed as a failed opportunist, a second-tier manipulator whose schemes never had the scope or sophistication for such a grand deception. So when the truth surfaced, even Victor, the man who never admits shock, was momentarily disarmed. For a flicker of time, the great titan of Newman Enterprises had no words. And that silence, rare and telling, rippled through the city like a tremor before an earthquake. But no one was more devastated than Lily Winters. To the outside world, she projected strength, composure, grace, a woman who had long since moved beyond Kane's influence. But beneath that calm exterior was a woman forced to face the full horror of a truth she had spent years refusing to consider, that Kane's fundamental nature had never changed, that the lies, the evasions, the half-truths were never just missteps or moments of weakness, but the framework of the man himself. She had known him longer than almost anyone. Had married him not once but twice, had shared children, homes, dreams, and failures with him. Their bond, frayed and battered, was still deeply embedded in the story of her life. And now, she was faced with the brutal task of explaining to those children, now grown, now watching the world with adult eyes, that their father wasn't just flawed, but possibly criminal on a scale too massive to comprehend. That conversation, the one she had postponed in her mind 1,000 times, became inevitable. She would have to sit them down and unravel not just the headlines, but the hidden truths, that their father had lived under an alias, that he had orchestrated a deception so complex it fooled governments and moguls alike, that he was now accused of facilitating murder on foreign soil, that everything he had told them about his business, his wealth, his recovery might have been a lie. And worse still, Lily would have to confront the feeling she couldn't quite suppress. That despite it all, despite the betrayal and humiliation, some part of her still loved him. Or at least loved the version of him she thought existed, the one she tried for years to believe in. And that realization, that lingering emotion for a man who had brought so much chaos into her life, was perhaps the most painful of all. As Kane's mugshot flashed across international news and his trial became a media circus, Genoa City was plunged into introspection. How had they allowed a man like Dumas into their boardrooms, into their strategy meetings, into their lives? Journalists uncovered the extent of his property holdings, luxury condos lining the district near Chancellor Park, secret investments in fashion houses, stakes in tech firms tied to Newman R&D. In retrospect, every acquisition was perfectly calculated, designed to put pressure on Genoa City's elite while enriching his growing empire under the radar. Yet no one saw the pattern. And now, they were forced to confront the fact that the greatest threat to their city had not come from an outsider, but from one of their own. In the corridors of Newman Towers, executives scrambled to erase every trace of connection. At Chancellor Winters, the mood was one of stunned betrayal, not just for the damage to the brand, but for the emotional weight it placed on Lily, who now found herself scrutinized at every turn. Even at Society, the city's high-end restaurant where deals were once made over cocktails, the whispers were relentless. Some blamed Lily for not warning them. Others blamed themselves for being so easily fooled. But everyone agreed on one thing: nothing in Genoa City would ever be the same again. And through it all, Kane remained silent. No public statements. No pleas of innocence or guilt. No apology. No denial. Just cold, measured silence. It was that silence that haunted Lily at night. The voice she used to know so well now replaced by headlines and transcripts and lawyers' briefs. She wondered what went wrong, what pushed him to take on such a role, what darkness he must have carried to sustain such a massive lie. Or perhaps the lie had always been the truth, and the man she thought she knew had never really existed at all. Whether Kane would be convicted or somehow escape punishment remained to be seen. But what was certain was that his unmasking had fractured Genoa City in ways that would take years to repair. Trust was broken. Relationships were strained. Entire families were left reeling. And at the center of it all was a man who had played God with their lives, and a woman who would carry the weight of that betrayal for the rest of hers. Because sometimes, the worst damage isn't the crime itself. It's the realization that you never truly knew the person who committed it.